Hello and welcome to the COVID-19 update on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. First, the highlights. World Health Organization announces Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, Senegal, South Africa and Tunisia as first recipients of mRNA vaccine technology in Africa. UNICEF commends Yobe State's vaccine pace and drive. And South Korea records new daily infection high of over 100,000. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, in collaboration with the National Youth Service Corps, is reminding Corps members on the risks of COVID-19 and the guidelines to keep all Youth Corps members, camp officials and visitors safe in orientation camps. At the 7th edition of the Safe Camp reopening of prospective Batch A Stream 1 Corps members, Dr. John Oladejo, Director Health Emergency Preparedness and Response, he represented the DG to the NCDC. He reminded the Corps members of the following guidelines in line with the Presidential Steering Committee to include compulsory screening of Corps members with the rapid diagnostic antigen test, physical distancing, regular hand washing, use of face coverings and proper hygiene in all camps, compulsory temperature screening at camp entrance, beds in hostels arranged for 2 meters spacing, lectures conducted, observing physical distancing and complemented via e-learning tools, infection prevention control reminders and communication materials to be displayed in every part of the camp, among others. Let's now bring you more on the pandemic update.
5 additional persons in Nigeria have tested positive to COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the latest figures were reported from 7 states and the FCT and indicate an increase from figures reported earlier. Lagos took the lead with 18 reported infections, followed by Cross River and the FCT with 7 cases each. Oyo came in with 5 cases, while Kano and Nasarawa reported 3 cases each. Both Ekiti and Rivers had 1 case. Nigeria now has a cumulative caseload of 254,182. This report includes a backlog of cases from Lagos and the FCT. It also takes backlogs of recoveries from the FCT and Oyo into account. No cases were reported from 9 states: Abia, Bauchi, Imo, Kaduna and others. 51 patients have been discharged in the last 24 hours, increasing the total number of recoveries to 230,530. There was no additional death recorded in the last 24 hours, leaving the fatality toll at 3,141. Currently, there are over 20,000 active cases in Nigeria, while more than 4.2 million samples have been tested so far. Lagos State accounts for the highest number of cases on admission, with over 17,000 active infections, followed by Benue and Nasarawa states. Over 16.7 million Nigerians of eligible age, representing 15% of the target population, have received 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, while more than 7.2 million of the population, representing 6.5%, are fully vaccinated. In Africa, over 11 million persons have tested positive, while over 245,000 deaths have been recorded across countries on the continent. Globally, the total number of confirmed cases has surpassed 419 million, while deaths are now beyond 5.8 million.
The World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has announced the first 6 countries that will receive the technology needed to produce mRNA vaccines on the African continent. At the African Union Summit in Brussels, Dr. Tedros says Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa and Tunisia, who all applied, have been selected as recipients. The announcement was made at a ceremony hosted by the European Council, France, South Africa and the W.H.O. The Global mRNA Technology Transfer Hub was established in 2021 to support manufacturers in low and middle-income countries to produce their own vaccines.
More than 80% of the population of Africa is yet to receive a single dose. Much of this inequity has been driven by the fact that globally vaccine production is concentrated in a few mostly high-income countries. One of the most obvious lessons of the pandemic, therefore, is the urgent need to increase local production of vaccines, especially in low and middle-income countries. Today, I'm delighted to announce the first 6 African countries that will receive technology from the hub to produce their own mRNA vaccines: Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tunisia. WHO will work with the companies and the government in each country to develop a roadmap for training and production based on their needs and capacities.
The lack of a market for vaccines produced in Africa is something that should be concerning to all of us. Organizations such as COVAX and Gavi need to commit to buying vaccines from local manufacturers instead of going outside of those hubs that will have been set up to go and buy vaccines for distribution to the African continent again.
This is mRNA technology designed in Africa, led by Africa, and owned by Africa, with the support of Team Europe.
Meanwhile, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, has commended the Yobe state government for scaling up COVID-19 vaccination across the state to reduce fatalities related to the disease. The UNICEF chief of Maiduguri field office, Pyong Nguyen, made the disclosure while inspecting vaccine storage facilities in Damaturu, the Yobe state capital.
At the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, the availability of vaccines was a major concern, especially to developing countries on the African continent. In Yobe State, the government had received over 200,000 Moderna, Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines and had also expanded its vaccination centers from 55 to 196 at offices, markets, worship centers and other public places. The state says it has adequate storage capacity to accommodate all COVID-19 vaccines, among other vaccines that may be received in the future.
We were at 1.9% coverage of the population with the COVID-19 vaccination. We are now at 14%. So you can see that we have actually improved significantly. If you look at these numbers in terms of the population of Yobe State of about 4,025,000, then you'll know that we have covered a lot of grounds within this short period of time, and we hope to do even more.
When you enter the store, you see we have ultra cold chain equipment, that is UCC, where we store our Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, of which the temperature of that fridge is about -80 degrees centigrade.
The UNICEF chief of Maiduguri office expresses delight over what she describes as an impressive vaccination drive in the state, which has recorded a significant number of vaccinations in the population within 5 weeks of expanding the centers.
I'm encouraged, I'm incredibly encouraged and very impressed by the commitment of the Yobe government and the state primary healthcare management board. The fact that they're able to move from 1.9% vaccination to 14% is a huge achievement. Here in Yobe, we're looking at, there is now a much higher demand for the vaccination to the extent that they are lacking vaccines and trying to get vaccines from other places that are expiring.
As of February 16, 2022, Yobe State had only 564 confirmed cases and 9 deaths. Currently, 65 patients are on admission.
New research coming out says the Omicron COVID subvariant BA.2 may be more dangerous than BA.1 and could pose a greater risk to public health. BA.2 has made headlines in recent weeks and is the subject of ongoing research after overtaking the previously dominant BA.1 Omicron type in countries like Denmark and South Africa. Well, joining us to talk more about this is a virologist, Dr. Ishaku Akiala. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Nigerians.
I mean, Doctor, from this new study, it's not yet over, is it? The mutations, the variants.
Absolutely. You know the properties of viruses. viruses, once they get encounter with an external environment, they mutate, they change their genetic makeup. And so that is why we have so many variants of viruses of variant origin, viral origin. So like in the case of Omicron, the dominant variant was the BA1, but research from South Africa, research from Denmark, and other part of Japan established that there are other variants called the BA2 variant. This variant was exposed to a hamster, a group of hamsters were exposed to this variant in laboratory environment, and they discovered that they came down with the SARS-CoV-2 virus of 80 times much more than the control BA1 variant. And that connotes, that translates that the transmissibility profile is very, very high in the variant that was discovered, which is the BA2 variant. And so it shows that the more a human population tends to have an interface with this virus and also expose them to external environment, the more chances that this virus will mutate and change their genetic makeup, thereby either bypass immune response or vaccines, or they will also increase hospitalization and transmission within human population. But the good news is that we have vaccine that can be able to take care of these variants. And so it calls on all individuals to see to this effect that of the mutation of the variants and be able to take these vaccines, which is quite key in terms of prevention and control of the transmission of this virus.
Dr. Kiala, I want to take up with you immunity after infection, because we've seen it. Some anti-vaxxers are saying that if you have recovered from COVID-19, your immunity is better than one who's taken the vaccine. What's the science saying about that?
Absolutely. Once you are infected with the virus, the body generates an immune response to that by developing antibodies. And then these antibodies also have what we call the B cells, memory cells, that, keep the body alert. Once it gets encounter with the virus again, the body releases these antibodies and then they destroy the virus. But immunologically, it has been established through literatures and experiments that these antibodies don't last for more than 6 to 10 months. And that's why we have issues of booster doses of vaccines over time. We have the first shot, the second shot, and the third shot, and the fourth shot in other climes like Israel. This is to enhance the body immunity towards this virus and also boost the antibody titers. So it has been established that people that have natural infections to COVID tend to have more antibody that has a lasting effect of about 10 months than people that acquired immunity through vaccine, which studies has revealed that it is just between 5 to 7 months. So I agree with you, Melin said that COVID is a new virus in town. It has changed our lifestyle, our way of life. Likewise, our immunity too has also changed in terms of understanding or recognizing the virus. So more research needs to be done to understand and also to establish the longevity of the antibodies in an individual that were vaccinated and also in an individual that had natural infection. This call for Nigerian scientists to also open windows for research in that direction.
Just before we let you go, Professor Akinbayomi, Commissioner for Health Lagos, said yesterday that the use of the face mask is still mandatory in Lagos to completely stem the spread of the deadly virus. Is there still a significant threat looking at the case numbers, especially coming from Lagos?
Absolutely, Melin said. This is quite key. We need to maintain the non-pharmaceutical measures in handling this pandemic, which is quite key. Face mask is one of them. In fact, I've gone through some places in Abuja today. I see people not wearing face masks. I've even gone to corporate buildings and see that they are abandoned water bowls. People don't also even use hand sanitizers again. People don't even maintain social distancing again. We tend to forget that we once had a lockdown down, and then this COVID is still with us. And so face masks is quite key. We just need to maintain all the non-pharmaceutical measures. But I just want to prescribe that time has come for us in the country, as a country, Nigeria, to also develop a national algorithm for self-testing. Melin said we must not wait for our samples to be collected and then over before 24 to 48 hours before results are being released. Just like the way you can go to a patent medicine store and a pharmacy store and pick a HIV test kit, a malaria test kit, and then test yourself. It is time for us to develop algorithm, roll out these rapid diagnostic test kits to the general public. Let us also test the feasibility and the acceptability of these rapid diagnostic kits, and also the self-testing component. You made mention in your report that NYC orientation camp, of course, for the past 1.5 years, we have started using the rapid diagnostic kits. It is time for us to make sure that we deploy these rapid diagnostic kits for self-testing. If we do that, individuals can be able to pick up these test kits, test themselves, and also report to appropriate authorities.
We always appreciate your time on the program. Thank you. Dr. Akiala Ishako is a virologist joining us from our Abuja studio. Many thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Still ahead on the program, Ekiti State to continue campaign on COVID-19 and also the importance of vaccination. Please join us again. Testing is one area Ekiti State is not relenting in as regards tackling the pandemic, and the state says it's taking the lead in that aspect to justify its seriousness. The State Ministry of Health also confirms that most frontline health workers have been vaccinated, except for a few who are still hesitant. The ministry says awareness will be sustained to enlighten the populace to yield to the call for vaccination, regular testing, and adherence to the preventive protocols.
We're going through some testing, another mass testing in the state. Up to about 70,000 testing were being supported by AFNet to test about 70,000 people across the state, RDT, lateral flow testing. So we had not also stopped. Ekiti State has like 190 testing centers now. We had moved to 145. We have the highest number of testing centers in Nigeria. The vaccination actually also does not, as we always know, doesn't stop anyone from getting infected to contract the COVID-19. But of course, it helps the immune system to be able to fight the virus when it's contracted. So it is expected that all health workers have been vaccinated. Well, I don't have the numbers on my head at the moment, but it is expected that quite a lot of health workers have been vaccinated already. And why I say this is because of the the different teams, that were put in place, vaccination teams. So they go from, apart from the ones that are fixed team that are present in almost all the hospitals, there will also have mobile teams that goes around. So we know that health workers have taken advantage to be vaccinated because of their frontline role within the healthcare setting.
Away from Nigeria, Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Germany's 16 state leaders have agreed on a gradual plan to lift most coronavirus restrictions by March 20. Germany recorded over 200,000 cases on Thursday, and with the 7-day average at about 170,000 cases, COVID infections are beginning to fall, and almost 75% of the population has been vaccinated at least twice. W.H.O correspondent Arthur Sullivan joins us right now from Berlin with more. Hi, Arthur. The German government made an important announcement this week that they aim to lift almost all coronavirus rules by the end of March. What has been said?
Yes, so for much of 22, Germany has had somewhat stricter regulations than a lot of its European neighbours when it comes to the coronavirus. But we do seem to finally be seeing a change based on what's been announced this week from the federal government. So what's been said is that over the next month or so, we will see a gradual reduction in the various restrictions, with the aim being that by March the 20th, almost all contact restrictions will have been removed, enabling German society to move on as best as it possibly can from the pandemic. So over the last while, there's been significant requirements in terms of vaccination and testing requirements to determine where people living in Germany can and can't go, whether that's to restaurants, bars, football stadiums, even in workplaces. But that's gradually going to change. So the first step will be that non-essential shopping, you will no longer need a proof of vaccination or a test to go to certain shops, as has been the case for the last while. Then from March the 4th, you will be able to go to more bars and restaurants without certain testing or other requirements. And then the aim is then finally by March the 20th, almost all restrictions will be gone. So a significant change in TAC. For example, at the moment, football stadia in Germany are at much reduced capacity, but finally within a month or so we will see full stadiums again. So that's the kind of level of change we're going to see, and that's why this week has been an important one in terms of Germany moving on from the virus.
And things are looking up to at least some normal. But Germany has also been slow to loosen restrictions compared to many European neighbours. What has changed?
Yes, Germany has been somewhat of an outlier compared to many of its European neighbours, particularly throughout this year, 2022. What has changed? Well, not a huge amount has really changed when you look at case numbers. Case numbers are still very high in Germany, still coming in at around 200,000 cases a day, although slowly but surely the rate of increase has been falling, and now we do seem to be finally seeing case numbers gradually falling themselves. So what the Minister for Health, Karl Lauterbach, has said is that the peak of the recent Omicron wave appears to have been reached. But I think what has also changed is that public opinion has reached a point where a prolonging of restrictions and a prolonging of the rules would be a harder and harder sell, both for citizens and for businesses. So it was inevitable that Germany would have to announce some sort of a pathway out of the restrictions, and that is what obviously has had to happen and what has happened here. A cautious tone has still been emphasised, though, by both the Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the Health Minister Lauterbach. What's important in this context is that Karl Lauterbach, the health minister, he's been in place since December. He has shown throughout the pandemic, even before he became the minister, extreme caution in terms of the coronavirus. And that has been the case since he became health minister, even with this Omicron wave.
But, even if restrictions are ending, the pandemic is very much still with us. How bad has the recent wave been for the country?
Well, given the sheer scale of infection numbers that we've seen in Germany, bear in mind we've seen several million over the past few weeks, this recent wave would appear to have been very bad, although when we look at the numbers of those who have sadly died from the virus compared with this wave this time last year, it thankfully has not been as severe. So while there have been significant numbers of deaths over the last while, relatively speaking, when we compare it to the amount who died this time last year and also the fact that there are far more cases this time, it has been much less severe, as we have come to expect with the Omicron variant. Most of those who have become seriously ill or have sadly died in the last while have been unvaccinated, and that is one of the last remaining questions facing German society and facing the government when it comes to how we proceed in the fight against the coronavirus.
W.H.O correspondent Arthur Sullivan joining us there from Berlin. Thank you. And despite the spike in cases, South Korea said it would ease pandemic restrictions today, even as the country's daily caseload crossed 100,000 for the first time, with officials citing economic concerns over social distancing measures. Seoul officials said they would ease restrictions by allowing cafes, restaurants to stay open an extra hour until 10 p.m. starting Saturday. Here's more on the global update.
South Korea's new COVID-19 cases have topped 100,000 for the first time amid an Omicron outbreak, though deaths have remained relatively low in the highly vaccinated country. Authorities announced today that they will slightly ease a curfew on businesses from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., but retain other measures such as a 6-person cap on private gatherings, a 7-day quarantine for international arrivals, mask mandates in public spaces, and vaccine passes for a range of businesses. The measures will be in place until at least March the 13th, after the March the 9th presidential election. Hong Kong's coronavirus battle has intensified as authorities identify more than 20,000 hotel rooms for quarantine accommodation after the city's leader Carrie Lam said citywide testing is being considered in the global financial hub. According to reports, the government plans to test up to 1 million people each day from March. China has said it will help Hong Kong bolster its testing, treatment and quarantine capacity and secure resources from rapid antigen kits and protective gear to fresh vegetables. Meanwhile, Hong Kong parents rushed children as young as 3 years old to vaccination centers this week as the government lowered the age limit for the shots, and deaths of 2 toddlers exacerbated concerns in a city struggling to cope with the COVID-19 surge. And in the United States, California has announced to become the first U.S. state to formally switch to an endemic response to the coronavirus pandemic.
And so we have work to do as it relates to turning the proverbial page. And what we're announcing here today is about turning a page, moving from this crisis mentality, moving from a reactive framework to a framework where we are more sentinel in our approach, that we stand firm and confident as we lean into the future, moving away from a reactive mindset and a crisis mindset to living with this virus. We have all come to understand what was not understood at the beginning of this crisis, that there is no end date, that there is not a moment where we declare victory.
Collective preemptive actions like mask wearing, already lifted this week for vaccinated people indoors, are shutting businesses down to curb the spread of the virus, will no longer be the norm. The disease can be classified as having reached the endemic stage when the impact of the virus becomes manageable as people grow immune to it.
Our website, channelcv.com, has more updates, breaking news, or stories at your fingertips. And that's the program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Stay healthy.